And next up in our NHL preview shows is the Chicago Blackhawks in the 2023-2024 season preview. And to talk the Blackhawks with me today is Jesse Scholl, the Iceman. You can find him at Picks and Parlays and other sites as well. You can find his Twitter link in the description below. So make sure to give Jesse a follow. You've been capping NHL for quite a long time now. So you're the Iceman. So I'm really happy to break down this video with you.
I'm the holder of a rather dubious record at picks and parlays. If you go to the leaderboards, it will show me as the number one guy for last season. But I'm sure Terry's aware that they cut that started on January 1st, so it only really encompasses half of the season. And I didn't have a very strong first half, so whoever is the true leader for last year is probably upset to see me there. But I did finish the season very strong. I still these days, Terry, I just follow hockey as the team. When the teams start jockeying for playoff position, I start to focus a lot closer. Of course, I love the playoffs. I'm a Canadian. I was born on Vancouver Island. I was a Canucks fan my whole life. When I was a kid, I knew more about hockey than anybody really. I lived, slept, and breathed hockey. All I did is watch hockey shows, listen. Tony Gallagher. Are you familiar with Tony Gallagher, a longtime broadcaster on the radio? No,
No, before my time.
before your time. Okay, yeah. I've been around for a while, but yeah. I guess when I was a kid, it was Trevor Linden's rookie year. Stan Smeal still played for the Canucks. Harold Snaps. Harold's. I don't know if you know the name Harold Snaps, but he was a bald defenseman, one of the last not to wear a helmet in the NHL. I mean, we're probably talking to people who didn't even realize that there was a time when people didn't wear helmets. But Harold Snaps was one of the last, probably the last Canuck to not wear a helmet, and he was a fan favorite. But anyways, yeah, hockey was my sport of choice as a kid, but I moved away from Canada in my 20s. Professional handicapping now has my focus more towards college football, NFL, college basketball. So I don't really get right into the hockey as closely as I used to, but I'm still happy to talk hockey and happy that you had me on your show.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you. And hey, you the end of the season finished well. So hopefully at the beginning of the season this year starts well for you. But we will jump right into it here, talking about Chicago. And there might not really be a whole lot of positive things to say about Chicago, especially for me, but it is what it is. We'll start with the additions, of course, uh, getting the first overall pick. Chicago fans all across the US and even Canada as well were jumping for joy to hear that the Chicago Blackhawks won the draft lottery. And of course, it was no big surprise. They drafted Connor Bedard, the next generational talent here, first overall. Chicago then went out and made a few trades, acquiring Nick Foligno, journeyman Nick Foligno, Taylor Hall, once an MVP, but of course, not really that same player anymore. And Corey Perry, also a really good player in his heyday, but now he's a fourth liner, physical guy. Ryan Donato, um, he has talent and he can score some goals, but he's never really made it. He's usually a fourth or third line guy. He's never really been able to crack the top six. So I don't see it as a huge addition overall. Subtractions when you're a rebuilding team, you're going to have subtractions. Jonathan Toews, obviously the former captain, is now gone. Other guys are really just depth guys, not really going to affect the team that much. So just subtractions that you would expect here. Jesse, what do you think about this? The additions and subtractions here for the Blackhawks this year?
Well, first off, I think it was important to part ways with Jonathan Toews, the old guard, those championship winning players, allow them to move on. Toews, he's at the tail end of his career, it appears. he's had a couple bad seasons in a row by his standards. I mean, in his heyday, he was considered like a he's only had one season that he even approached a point a game player, but he's always been considered like a MVP candidate type of player. I'd have to say that his career he had they won the cups with Tays and Kane, but his first few years in the league, I think he was expected to be, uh, on the verge of being the next Joe Sakic, Steve Yzerman type of player, and he never really got there. He had one moment, I believe, in the 2022 Olympics in Salt Lake City. He played with Yzerman and Sakic and Theo Fleury, Team Canada, and they beat a very stacked Team USA team. And I think he was a big part of that team. Perhaps I got my year wrong, but anyways, Tays, I must have my year wrong. We must be thinking 2006 or 2008 because Tays isn't old enough to be on that 2002 team. But anyways, he did have probably one of the, aside from the Cups, one of the best moments of his career playing for Team Canada. But yeah, I think good to get rid of him, get rid of some of these other guys, start over, they're rebuilding. Kind of curious, the guys they brought in. Corey Perry has been a guy that you want if you're making a run at the Cup in the playoffs. He's the kind of guy that can conjure up some really gritty type of something that there's very few players in the NHL actually have. When you have to turn it up to the next level, Corey Perry is a guy that's got that extra gear that not everybody has. Let's see, Claude Lemieux. Maybe I'm aging myself by bringing up names like Claude Lemieux, but over the years, I could even age myself even further by bringing up a guy, Chris Kontos. Are you familiar with the name Chris Kontos? You'll have to Google that. You'll look that up. That's a one-hit wonder in the NHL. But anyways, Corey Perry, signing him up for a rebuild, it seems rather curious. It seems like he's just there to collect a paycheck and float around. I don't have high expectations for Perry on this team. And the same with Taylor Hall, a guy who's had success early in his career, been a major disappointment basically everywhere he's been for the last few years, still carries a big name, comes over for a bit of a paycheck, probably plans on floating around, to be honest. I don't have high expectations for Taylor Hall either. Nick Foligno, this could be a good landing spot for him. He's a guy that I kind of like Foligno's game. Kind of a gritty player that's got a bit of skill. He could find himself a home here. And then Connor Bedard, it's all about Connor Bedard. The comparisons are out there with Connor McDavid. Of course, they have the same first name. They're both highly touted. Bedard broke some record. I believe he broke Eric Lindros's record for goals in the World Junior Tournament. Is that correct? Are you familiar with the records he holds for?
I don't have
World
that
Junior?
up. No, I
Okay,
don't.
yeah.
No, but
I do.
he's definitely broken records, and everyone has already touted him the next McDavid, and the pressure is already on. He knows he's the face of the franchise now, and there's definitely pressure for him here.
I'm one that's often skeptical about this kind of situation. We've seen it in the past with, usually the guys that are supposed to be the next great one, your Lindros, your McDavid, those guys don't bust very often. Lindros, of course, ran into injury troubles, but he was the most dominant player in hockey for a brief period when he was with the Flyers, perhaps 6-8 years or something like that before Scott Stevens ended his career. But yeah, and McDavid has absolutely lived up to all expectations in Edmonton. And can Connor Bedard do the same for the Blackhawks? I'd be inclined to say yes, but I wouldn't want to go to the bank on it happening in his first year in the league. Some major differences, Terry. McDavid's a big boy. I mean, McDavid was coming into a man's league with a man's body, so to speak. as was Lindros. And coming into the NHL at 5'10", listed at 5'10", a buck 85. Normally, young players entering the league, when you're listed at 5'10", that probably means you're 5'8" or 5'9", and a buck 85 maybe on a good day after Thanksgiving turkey. I wouldn't doubt if he's not quite up to those numbers, and those are inflated. And I'm not even 5'10" myself, so I can tell you I'm a lot more than a buck 85 though. But anyways, a lot of these guys in the NHL are well over 6 feet, and most teams like to draft players that are 6 foot or higher or taller, and bigger bodied guys. And I think it's more of an adjustment when you're a smaller guy, and you have to adjust to playing with 30-year-old men that are 6'6", over 200 pounds and such. So let's look at the Oilers. The Blackhawks finished last in the Central last year, 59 points. Only the Anaheim Mighty Ducks had fewer points in the NHL last year. And what can they do from here? Well, the Edmonton Oilers, the previous year to McDavid's first full year in the league, they finished last in their division with 70 points, and the following year they finished with 103 points and clinched a home ice advantage in the playoffs. That was McDavid's first year, and he scored 100 points in his first full season. He played half a year the previous year when they struggled. Bit of a different situation, though. Edmonton had been stockpiling picks for quite some time. They had a ton of first-round picks on that team prior to his arrival. They just continued to struggle and couldn't get over the hump. And some would say they still haven't got over the hump, but they are one of the better teams in the NHL right now. And Connor McDavid's probably the best player in the NHL. And I guess Chicago would like to follow that model and then take it a little further and actually win a championship. But it's difficult for me to see that kind of turnover that Edmonton saw, where they went from last to clinching home ice advantage in the playoffs in McDavid's first season. I just don't see the talent around Bedard here, and I don't expect Bedard to go off for 100 points in his rookie season either. How about you, Terry? What are your thoughts on that?
We will get to that later on when we get to the future bets. So we'll definitely get to
Okay.
that later on. We'll move over to the next segment, which is upcoming free agents, and pretty big list here for the Chicago Blackhawks. Of course, a lot of these guys are RFAs. A lot of these guys will get signed to cheap deals. But when looking at the UFAs, a lot of these guys will be on their way out. I won't be surprised to see Tyler Johnson, Nick Foligno, Corey Perry all find other spots and other teams. Peter Mrazek and the goaltender, you want to let him go. I guess if you're rebuilding and you're trying to tank and trying to get a good draft pick, then actually you might want to keep Peter Mrazek around for a couple more years because he's definitely helped them with that. The defensemen, again, the RFA guys you probably want to sign. Zaitsev, Tenorti, you let them go. The biggest name on this list, and it's a big list, is Lucas Reichel. It was an RFA, the bottom four there, but he's not going to break the bank. He's an RFA, so he's a restricted free agent. Chicago will be able to re-sign him. But if he has a big year this year, and if he is on the top line with Bedard, which we'll get to the possible lineup here in a second, if he is on that top line, he could have a really good season, and he could get a nice payday coming up here after this season. Jesse, it's a huge list of upcoming free agents here. Really, the important name is Lucas Reichel, but for a rebuilding team, what do you think is a good type of player for them to add going into other rebuilding years?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know what to make of this. What about Vlasic? Vlasic is he previously with the
He's
San
a
Jose
young
Sharks?
guy.
Is it
He's
it's
no, not that Vlasic.
that,
No, Alex
not that
Vlasic is a
classic?
young guy. All the RFA guys are young guys that
Yeah.
like that'll a lot of people haven't even heard of yet. So they'll
Mhm.
get re-signed. But basically, looking at it here, this maybe you could re-sign Nick Foligno again for another year for some leadership. But
Do you know
what
how
should
old Felino is? I'm thinking like he's hovering around 30 at this point.
35 or 36?
Oh, he's quite up there. Yeah. Okay, I
Yeah,
see.
he's
So
35. So he
so
would
he's
just be
only
a
got a
leadership
few years
addition.
left
But
probably.
yeah, what should they look
Perry's
at
over
for
40 already, right?
Perry? Yeah, I think he's 39 or something.
Okay.
So he's probably on his way out. But yeah, any thoughts on the type of player that the Hawks that a rebuilding team needs?
Um, yeah, I mean, I'm not familiar with some of the names. Like I said, the Vlasic that I know is with the San Jose Sharks a while back. None of these guys look like make or break. Need to keep or really need to worry about. To me, I think ideally where the Hawks want to be in 2 or 3 years is no, there's not many names on this list that I think need to be there in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, basically just want to sign the RFAs and see if any of them can break out in the next couple of years. But we'll go along to the next segment, which is possible lineup, looking at how the Blackhawks should look this year. And of course, with possible lineup and a team that is rebuilding, there are other names that are not on this list that could surprise in the preseason and end up making the team. And of course, these projections with this Hawks team, anything can happen when it comes to a possible lineup. But projections right now have Hall, Bedard, and Reichel on the top line there, and it's not a top line in the league, but those three guys will be able to score. Um, the issue is that when you go to the second line, that should be a team's fourth line. Maybe a couple guys in the third line, but that's not a second line in this NHL. And the third line is not a third line in this NHL. The Hawks just don't have it here when it comes to forward depth. That top line is going to have to face every team's best defensive line, every team's best defensive pair, and the Hawks are a one line wonder. So it'll be easy for teams to match up and to defend against this Blackhawks team. Looking at the defense, um, it's worse than the offense. Those defensemen are not going to stop the puck. Peter Mrazek and whoever starts in goal is going to be left out to dry night after night. Um, so this Hawks team is a team that I'm going to be looking to fade, which shouldn't be a real big surprise here. But of course, I would say that with this lineup, they're going to be priced like one of the worst teams in the league. But with Bedard, we can already see in the point total, which we'll get to in the next segment, that people have high beliefs for this Hawks team right off the bat. But I'm going to have to see it first, even if that Hall, Bedard, and Reichel line is absolutely on fire night after night. There's no defense and there's no goaltending that's going to be able to stop opponents. So looking at it here at the possible lineup, if you're looking at player props, it's that top line. But as I said, I expect defensemen on the other teams to be focusing and shutting down that top line. Jesse, of course, a lot of these guys I don't even know, so I don't expect you to know them. But what do you think here about this possible lineup um,
I mean,
for the
it looks
Hawks?
like it's designed so they can get another high draft pick. That's what it looks. That's what the design looks to me. You're going to throw these guys out there, and the intention is not to compete, but to stay in rebuild mode, look for another lottery pick, and look forward to 2 3 years ahead. Is That's what I'm seeing when I see this lineup.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, we're not going to spend too much time on this because there's not much you can really say other than what we said. It's going to be a pretty bad lineup here. And looking at the final segment of the show is future bets. We've got quite a few bets here for the Blackhawks. When it comes to point total 71.5, I think that's too high. The Blackhawks last year had 59 points. And yes, I get it. You're adding Bedard, but is he going to put you up to 71? That's going to be or 72 points. So that would be another 5, 7 wins this year. I don't see it with the defense, and I expect teams to shut Bedard down. Obviously, if he is as good as people expect him to be, you're not going to be able to. Not everyone's going to be able to shut him down, and he's going to get his points. But I don't think the Hawks hit 72 points here. So obviously, I don't like any of them make the playoffs or any of those bets. Looking at Bedard goals, 30.5, I would slam the under here. Bedard, he's going to have to assist. He's going to have to assist more than score, I think. Teams are going to be focusing on him like crazy. If anything, you might want to look at Taylor Hall goals, or you might want to look at Lucas Reichel goals, because I do believe Bedard is going to be focused by defenses, and that will leave the other guys open. So Bedard points 69.5. I don't have any play there, but I would take under in Bedard goals. Mrazek wins at 14.5. Obviously, that's a really low total for a starting goaltender, but he gets injured season after season. And last year, he had 10 wins. So I'm not playing it, but I would lean with the under there as well. Least points at the NHL, plus 500. So that's it's plus 500 for Chicago to finish with the worst record in the NHL this year. And while that is an attractive price at plus 500, I do believe there is another Western Conference team in the Pacific Division, which we'll get to later on in early October, that I think probably will finish with the least points in the NHL. They have the favorite. They're the favorite to finish with the least points. And yes, it's the San Jose Sharks. So they are the favorites to finish with the least points in the NHL. But plus 500 here for Chicago is kind of interesting. Bedard to win the Calder at minus 145. You're never going to find me laying minus 145 with anything. Minus 130, minus 135 is my cutoff. So you'll definitely not find me laying minus 145, and definitely not on a future bet. There's other bets I would place. Who will have more points? Chicago minus 115, Montreal minus 115. I would slam the Montreal minus 115. I'm high on the Montreal Canadiens if they stay healthy. You can watch the Montreal show for more there, but I think that's completely priced wrong. Montreal should be minus 140, minus 150 to have more points, not minus 115. So I see value there in that bet. Jesse, future bets for the Chicago Blackhawks. I don't know if you do a lot of NHL futures, but what do you think about these bets here?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with pretty much everything you said. I'm not taking the over on any of these over unders. I'm basically fading the Blackhawks on everything. There's no chance to make the playoffs or any of that stuff. Bedard points. Like I said, I think his size and the lack of talent around him. I know Taylor Hall's a big name, but what has Taylor Hall done recently? I mean, maybe I should pull up his stats, but I
He
mean,
was at the third liner with Boston last year, maybe a second liner. I'll get his numbers up here. But he's going to be the guy now when you're looking at it.
I guess
Last year he had,
he is an unrestricted free agent, right? So in a contract year, could he come out and have a big year? I guess he could. Yeah, 36 points last year in 61 games on the third line. But I mean, you're expecting a massive step up, right? From
yeah.
that to and he's kind of got a reputation as being a bit of a floater, does he not? Like question his work ethic and these kind of things. Is am I getting that wrong, or is that something that you've heard?
I've heard different things. Yeah, um, I've heard different things, but really, other than that MVP year, he was good when he was with Edmonton, and then he went to New Jersey and he had that 93-point season in 76 games.
Mhm.
But after that, he kind of slowly fell off.
And
And yeah,
did he fall off right after he signed a big contract?
I don't really have I don't know exactly when he signed the contract, but yeah, he's gonna have to produce
I
on
think
this
that
top
he
line with
did.
Bedard.
I think that he did sign a big contract, and then he dropped off. I'm going to check that out right now.
Yeah, but he's gonna be on the top line now, so he's gonna be playing with Bedard. So people might look at his point total, um, and his point total may be inflated a bit. I didn't see it when I was doing the research for the show to get these bets together. It's mainly everything's focused on Bedard, so not really much with Taylor Hall.
I'm sure you're aware of the train of thought that you know players when they're an unrestricted play free agent, they play harder, play better, they have career years as
Yeah,
unrestricted free agents, and then players that have just recently signed a big contract, uh, show up to camp overweight and perform poorly. That's sort of a anecdotal sort of feeling, or we think of examples of this, but I was thinking about it the other day, and I started doing a little bit of research to see if there was any proof of this or anything concrete. Like, does any has anybody actually done a tally or taken the stats on how players perform as unrestricted free agents or right after they've signed a new contract? And I did come across a study at the University of Missouri where a psych professor did actually do a tally. It wasn't for the NHL, it was for Major League Baseball and the NBA. But I think we're talking about the psychology of an athlete rather than the sport itself. So I think the fact that it applies to both baseball and basketball would suggest to me that it would also be applicable to hockey and football. And yeah, he was able to show conclusive evidence that players playing in a contract year outperform their career averages, and players that have recently signed a contract underperform their career averages. So that would bode well for Taylor Hall in this case.
yeah, for sure. Any thoughts on who will have more points, Chicago or Montreal, or any of the other
I
tops?
agree 100% about Montreal. You know, one of the things is you just don't not show up for work in Montreal. It's a pretty hard place to play poorly. The fans will let you know it. The media will let you know it. And if you plan on not showing up for work, you better ask for a trade because they're not going to have it in Montreal. And they've got some players on that team. I mean, you're showing me this roster, and I'm like, who are these guys, right?
Yeah,
But if you showed me Montreal's roster, I'm familiar with most of those guys, and I think a lot of them have potential. And yeah, I think just by the competitive nature of the franchise and the fans and the what is demanded of these players, they're going to have to perform at least outperform a team that's clearly looks like they're tanking for another lottery pick to me.
yeah, for sure. And that is the Chicago Blackhawks season preview show. Of course, not really a whole lot to say about this team. They're going to be rebuilding for another year, but they do have Connor Bedard now. So, fans of Blackhawks, that's one thing to be happy about is you do have this first overall pick. But make sure to follow Jesse. As I said, The link to his Twitter will be in the description below. So make sure to give him a follow. Thanks for watching, guys. Thank you, everyone, so much for watching this NHL season preview show. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons as we continue on breaking down all 32 NHL teams, which will lead to the regular season when the Getting Wild with Terry and Friends NHL betting show will return. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Of course, make sure to follow everyone in the description below that was on today's show to show them some support. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you on the next show.